A lot of veterans are trying to use their VA loan to buy multi-unit property, but what they don't understand is there's some very key guidelines that go into how to make this possible. So in this video, I'm going to break down everything that you need to know about purchasing multi-unit property with your VA home loan benefit, from guidelines along with some real world scenarios where I actually will show you how to calculate what your potential rent could be versus what your mortgage payment would be. So if you want to learn more about multi-unit property, stick around to the end of the video. I have it all covered for you in this video. Before I jump into the video, I want to say a huge thank you to the 14% of you guys who watch this channel. It's because of you guys who have subscribed that I continue to be able to do what I am doing, which is hopefully providing value to you guys on your real estate journey. To the other 86% of you guys who aren't subscribed, if you are getting value out of this channel, please do me a favor, join the community. It's completely free, and my goal is to add as much value to you as I possibly can so that you have the confidence when you are ready to go on your home purchasing journey. First things first, let's talk about what a multi-unit property is so we're all on the same page here. Multi-unit for residential purposes is going to be anything that has 2 units up to 4 units. 2 units would be essentially a duplex, whereas a 3 unit would be a triplex, and then a 4 unit would be known as a quadplex. All of these types of properties are eligible to be purchased with the VA home loan benefit as long as you meet a very specific set of criteria in order for you to do it. When it comes to criteria and guidelines, here's what the VA is going to allow you to do. 1, there is no down payment requirement still while purchasing multi-unit property, just like if you were going to purchase a condo or a townhome or even a single family home. The second is there is still no private mortgage insurance, which is a premium that you would have to pay on top of your mortgage payments in order to protect the lender. Private mortgage insurance is different from homeowners insurance. They have no similarities to each other. Private mortgage insurance is essentially put in place on FHA and conventional loans if you're putting less than 20% down. And this is put in place to protect the lender just in case you potentially default on that mortgage. It allows the lender to be made whole again. On a VA loan, whether you are purchasing single family, condo, townhome, or multifamily, there is no private mortgage insurance ever. Another thing that makes this really awesome is it still has flexible credit requirements, which means that if you don't have perfect credit or you have less than perfect credit, you can still purchase multi-unit property with the VA home loan benefit. But what does less than perfect mean? You see, with the VA loan, the VA actually does not have a minimum credit score in their VA handbook. The VA handbook is the minimum guidelines that all lenders must follow. However, lenders can add their own rules and regulations on top of the VA handbook in order to get a loan from them. This is what's called overlays, and this is going to be what you're going to want to pay attention to when deciding who you are going to work with if you have less than perfect credit. And I think it still does apply even if you don't have a credit issue, because there could be other guidelines that lender may have that could restrict you in other areas where the VA guidelines may not. The other really cool thing about the VA loan when purchasing multi-unit property is there is no debt to income limit. Debt to income is a ratio or a percentage that is dependent upon how much money you have coming in versus how much money you have coming out every single month for your monthly liabilities. What this is going to look like is something like this. If your household makes $10,000 gross per month, but your monthly bills equal out to $5,000 per month, you have a 50% debt to income ratio. Now, part of that debt to income ratio when you are trying to qualify for a new mortgage is not only going to be the bills that you currently have, but also the bill that you're essentially going to be taking out, which would be your new mortgage. So when they're looking at your actual situation, they're not just looking at the bills that you have, but they're also looking at the bill that you're trying to take on to actual factor in what it would look like for your debt to income ratio. The nice thing is with the VA loan, debt to income ratio is not used for decision making. It's actually a little thing called residual income. And residual income depends on a few different things. First, where you're located geographically. And second, your household size. Your household size and geographic location dictates how much money the VA expects you to have left over after all of your bills are paid. The smaller the household, the less money the VA requires you to have left over because there's less mouths to feed and less people to take care of. The bigger the household, the more the money the VA will expect you to have left over. Either way, whether you have a smaller household or a larger household, typically what I do see is it allows the veteran to still be able to qualify for more house than they would have been able to qualify for if they would have been doing a conventional or an FHA loan. Now, of course, it goes without saying that the VA loan still has a no down payment requirement when purchasing multi-unit property, which is extremely powerful because it allows you to get into purchasing a multi-unit property where you are now going to be a real estate investor and have a real estate portfolio with little to no money out of pocket. But this is where I also want to make sure I preface one very important detail. You see, down payment and closing costs are two completely different things. Down payment is a requirement towards the loan that you are taking out. For example, if you're doing an FHA loan, the down payment requirement is 3.5% down. And if you're doing a conventional loan, the down payment requirement is 3% down at the very minimum. On a VA loan, there is no minimum down payment requirement, but that does not mean that there aren't going to be closing costs. I'm here to tell you right now that no matter what you may hear on the internet or from friends and family, down payment and closing costs are two different things. And even though you may not have a down payment requirement, you still will have closing costs incorporated when purchasing a home. Now, you may be able to get those closing costs covered by someone else, like maybe your lender, or even from your realtor, or even from the seller, which is going to be the most common way this is done. This may allow you to not have to come out of pocket to cover those things yourself, but I'm here to tell you that those things are in place regardless, even though you may not be paying for them. Now, more times than not, you as the buyer will be paying your closing costs in some way, shape, or form, but it's important to understand that these items do exist, which means you want to make sure you prepare yourself for the ability to be able to potentially have to cover them. Closing costs can range anywhere between, I would say, about 2 to 3% of however much house you are purchasing. So if you are purchasing a home that is about $500,000, you're probably going to be looking at about $12,000 to $15,000 in closing costs. But as I mentioned before, you could potentially get those items covered from the seller as you're going through the purchasing process. Now I want to talk about the very key ways to qualify for multi-unit property. There's actually going to be two ways this can be done. The first way is using rental income. You see, if you are buying a quadplex, for example, and each unit that you have on that quadplex rents for $1,000, this is rental income that you can use to help offset your mortgage payment. Now let's create a very simple example here that I think we can all follow. Let's say your mortgage payment is $4,000 per month and you have 3 units collecting $1,000 in rental income each. You're obviously going to be living in one of those units, so you won't be able to use the rental income for the fourth one because that's where you're going to occupy. But you have $3,000 in total from those other units. When you're trying to qualify for this property, the VA is only going to give you up to 75% of your total rental income to be able to offset towards your monthly payment. So if you are collecting $3,000 in total rental income, when it comes to qualifying, they're not going to give you the full $3,000. They're only going to give you $2,250, which is what will be put in place to help offset that mortgage payment. So you'll at least have to be able to cover about $1,750 against your other monthly liabilities. The other variable at play here is going to be experience. The VA wants to see that you have experience as a landlord before they allow you to purchase a property and use the rental income to help you qualify. And they do this so that way they're knowing that they're not putting you in a situation to potentially fail, because owning rental property is not as easy as people think. Well, if you don't have at least 2 years of experience on your tax returns of owning or managing rental property, then there is going to be another variable at play here. And this is going to require you to have two things. One, they're going to require you to have at least 6 months of reserves. 6 months of reserves are essentially going to be 6 months in total of whatever the property's expenses are. Now, earlier we mentioned that an example was our mortgage payment being about $4,000. So I'd like to use that example going forward with this. If you don't have rental property experience on your tax returns, you're going to need to have at least 6 months of that $4,000 set aside, which would essentially be $24,000. Now, this is money that must be set aside in your actual reserves. It cannot go towards the purchase of the property or even part of your closing costs. So if you're covering your closing costs, you need to have the money for your closing costs in addition to the reserve requirement as well, set aside and seasoned, which means it cannot just have been added into your bank account recently. It must have been there for at least 90 days. Another thing they're going to require you to have, other than the 6 months of reserves, if you do not have the rental property experience, is going to be having a property manager in place. Having a property manager in place is going to cost you money, typically anywhere between, I would say, 8 to 12% per month of whatever your rental income is, but that is going to help mitigate some of the risk that could come into play for a new property manager, because you as a new homeowner and a new property manager don't really have the experience that a actual professional property manager already will have. And this is allowing the VA to see that you have something in place to help help protect you along with helping and protect the loan. So that way there is a lower chance of default. Now, you don't have to have the property manager forever, but I would say that you want to have a property manager set up for at least the first round of leases. So if you do 12-month leases, you're going to want to have that property manager in place for that time. And then after that, if you want to go on to managing the property yourself, you definitely can do that. Now, what if you don't have rental property experience? You don't have 6 months reserves, which means that you're not really going to be able to use rental income. What are your options going to be now? Well, your only option in order to be able to purchase multi-unit property without those other things on your side is going to be qualifying for the entire monthly payment, which means not using the rental income. So now, if we use the same scenario that we used earlier and your monthly payment was $4,000, you're now going to have to be able to cover and show that you have the income to support that $4,000 a month monthly payment, which sometimes people are able to do. This does not mean going forward you can't use rental income once you've actually closed on your loan. It just simply means you cannot use the rental income to help you qualify for the loan, which means it is still possible even if you don't have those other things we mentioned in place. Okay, now that we have our property, I'm opening up a mortgage calculator that will give us a full breakdown of what our monthly payment would look like. And I already showed you guys where to find the breakdown of the property details, but now we need to figure out what this payment will be based on the sales price at $480,000. So I started entering in some details here already. $480,000 for our purchase price, loan amount $480,000. I did 6.5 for our rate, and there's a reason I did that. I looked up the national average VA 30-year fixed rate, which is right here. I will also have this link down below in the description so you can access this whenever you guys want. I post national average rates every single day. So if you're not subscribed and you want to kind of know where the national average is for rates, whether that's VA, FHA, conventional, or even jumbo financing, this gets posted every day in the community tab. Or if you just check the link down below in the description, this link gets uploaded or updated every single day. So VA 30-year fixed national average is 6.3. I'm kind of just giving a little bit more of a worst case scenario using 6.5. Then when we get down to here, you're going to see funding fee. Funding fee, if you're not aware, is a VA requirement if you are not collecting VA disability of a 10% rating or more, if you are not a Purple Heart recipient, and if you are not a surviving spouse. If you're not one of those three things, you're going to have a funding fee associated with your loan, and the funding fee gets rolled into your total loan amount. If you're using the VA loan for the first time, the funding fee is going to be 2.15% of your loan amount. Again, this gets rolled into the loan. It is not required to be paid up front. If you're using it for a subsequent time, which is essentially anything more than the first time, then your funding fee is going to be 3.3%. So we're going to assume that this is your first time using the VA loan, and we're going to go ahead and leave 2.15% right there in that first slider right there. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to scroll down because I want to look up some details in regards to taxes and insurance. Now, these totals are annual amounts. So see right here, so this is annual amount, and then it should say annual amount as well. And same for HOA, annual amount as well. This property, I do not think had an HOA. Yeah, 0 HOA. So we're going to go ahead and delete that real quick. And then we're going to update how much it's telling us our taxes and insurance are. I'll throw a calculator up there so you can see that. These are monthly amounts. So for insurance, it says $352. I'm going to multiply that by 12, $42.24. Then we're going to go down to our taxes. Taxes says $409. I'm going to multiply that by 12 as well. This is actually pretty low for Texas. $49.08, I believe was our number. Yes. So that's going to be our tax amount right there. Now, our total monthly payment for this property is now going to be $38.60.16. Now, what we wanted to look at is how much of that payment is being covered by our tenants. What you'll see here is unit 1 is vacant, unit 2 is occupied, unit 3 is also vacant, and unit 4 is occupied. So you have 2 units that are already occupied. Now, let's say that you're going to occupy unit number 3, which is $1,250, but you have unit 1, 2, and 4 that end up being occupied, even though 1 is not occupied just yet. We're going to use our potential rental income of $1,400 for unit 1 plus $1,350 for unit number 2 and $1,400 for unit number 3. That brings our total rental income for those 3 units alone to $4,150. But remember earlier I said you're only able to use 75% of the rental income to help you qualify. So if we subtract minus 25%, you have $3,112, which is actually, that's a great income amount to be receiving for a monthly payment of $38.60. So there's my example for you guys on how to analyze a property that I hope will help you on your journey as you're trying to figure out what multi-unit property will work best for you. If you got value from this video, do me a huge favor, hit the like button down below. You have no idea how much this actually helps the video and the channel succeed, so that way it can be shared to more veterans and people just like you who need to know this information. The last thing I want to leave you with is the most important thing. Jesus loves you and he paid the ultimate price for your life. So if you turn to him, trust in him, and believe in him, he has a beautiful plan and purpose for you. I'll see you in the next one.